Greetings, everyone. Welcome back from the Michigan bye week. Anthony Broom here with Clayton Safey here on the Wolverines Monday Night Live show. It is October 14th. Super long bye week. Whenever you have 2 weeks between games, it typically does feel that way. But back at it on Saturday at Illinois, second road trip of the year. 3:30 start on CBS as our producer brings up the schedule here on the screen. And while it's on my mind, 3:30 p.m. CPS on Saturday. Next Saturday, Michigan State at home, 7:30 p.m. Big Ten Network. So that was set today as well. We have a lot to get to, whether it is Sherrone Moore's Monday press conference, whether it's expectations coming out of the bye. It feels like a nice little reset for everyone. Certainly that was kind of the tone that the press conferences took today, and now you can kind of move forward and reevaluate and self-scout and do all that. But seems like it was a productive week. Went back to fundamentals. We'll talk about what Sherrone Moore had to say. But Clayton, welcome in, my friend.
College football is not the same without Michigan, but it was a great weekend of college football. Unfortunately, baseball, our team didn't get it done. But it's good to have Michigan football back this week in an actual game to talk about. So we got to get through another one of these buys later in the year, but we got through it.
It's a double bye season for sure. I was busy Saturday. I did catch the end of Ohio State, Oregon, which it's like the best part of the game to catch.
Yeah.
It was like watching, it's like tuning into a NASCAR race, like right as they wave whatever the flag right before the final lap is. And then there's just this devastating crash. I got to watch the devastating crash. And man, if I had more time this weekend, I would have been spending a lot more time on Ohio State message boards, but saw plenty on social media. That looked like a great game. I haven't gone back and watched a replay of it, but you just hate to see it. You just hate to see it.
I mean, NASCAR races, one guy comes up just short or they run out of time, right at the end. So it's kind of what happened on Saturday night, and hell of an atmosphere, but a lot of good games too. Besides that, it was good to see a lot of Big Ten teams in action.
You don't typically see a guy in a NASCAR race like hit the brakes before the finish line, though. And let the race.
Oh, he should have hit the brakes sooner, but
yeah, well, again, you hate to see it. As you can see here, we both have Michigan gear on, as we do now and again on Monday nights. That's because we're brought to you by our friends over at HomeField Apparel. Clayton, rocking the producer Megan. Can we get like the full shot on Clayton? Give him a kind of a close up.
Not a great look for me, a full shot, but
look at the bomber jacket. That's a beautiful thing. The Michigan bomber jacket's on sale. Of course, we've been talking about our friends over at HomeFieldApparel.com for years at this point. I'm wearing the trucker hat, which comes in a little show and tell here today. This ginormous thing here, the HomeField Platinum box, which there was a hoodie in there. There's a long sleeve t-shirt. There was I got this pair of socks here. I got a koozie. I got the Platinum Pass, which gets you kind of priority access to some of the drops that they do. You can see it pulled up there on the screen if you're watching the video version. Early returns, the undefeated 15-0 hoodie, which is exclusive only to this box. It is the softest, most comfortable hoodie I own already. I can say that after having it for 4 or 5 days, whatever it is. It's quality stuff, this trucker hat. I'm a big fan of the Wolver Bear logo. Always cool to get that on anything. But all those items that you see on the screen, whether it's the long sleeve t-shirt, the undefeated 15-0 hoodie, the helmet sticker t-shirt, the hat that I'm wearing here on screen, that is all exclusive to the 2024 Michigan Football Platinum box. So you can get that at HomeField Apparel today. Use that promo code Wolverine for 15% off your first order. Get this. The holidays are coming up. Get yourself a bomber jacket. Get the Michigan fan in your life a bomber jacket. So many cool things they have over there. I thumb through that website for years. You wait for a Michigan collection. Oh, for me, there's a Central Michigan collection, and you just kind of see everything there. And among all these schools that they have, which is a good portion of them at this point, I think that Michigan collection is right up there, if not the best one. So we're biased, of course, but again, use promo code Wolverine for 15% off your first order today, and get in on it as just in time for Chris Ballas to join the show here. It looks like. Hello, Chris. Goodbye, Chris. Hello. Welcome.
Hey, you guys there?
We are here.
Oh, we're here. Yeah.
Technical difficulties as always. I got to fix my audio. I probably sound like I'm underwater.
Oh, you
Nope.
sound
All right.
Sounds all right.
You sound good. You look like you're
Sorry,
about
fellas.
to.
I feel bloated. You know why? Because I've gained 7 pounds in the first month and a half of football season here. And that's what football season does to you guys. It takes 7 months to get back to your summer body. And then it takes 7 weeks for you to lose it when you're my age at 39. So it sucks. But anyway, congratulations to Anthony Broom, now married. And understand it was a great day, even though the Tigers lost. You know what? I'm really happy for you and wish you a lifetime of happiness.
Oh, thank you. You know what the best part about, and again, there is no best part or silver lining about that game, but the second the grand slam happens, I was at my brother's house, my brother, my best man, just getting ready. And we're like, time to get ready, I guess. And you just kind of turn it off and go about your day. So
That's right.
My thing was like, don't leave whatever the result was going to be, leave no doubt, because it would have been about the 8th inning that we had to be where we were going for pictures and all that. So phenomenal day, super, super honored and super blessed to join families and have a celebration, and have a bigger celebration in the spring. So you guys will be getting your chicken or fish thing in the mail soon enough.
Can't wait.
So,
Chicken sandwich.
Yeah. All right.
Another airplane reference there for Clayton Safey won't get it, but Anthony Broom knows what's going on.
All right, fellas. Well, we did, as I said before, we are back from a bye week, a super long bye week. Sort of needed when you look, come off that Washington game. You're 4-2 coming out of the first 6 games of the season, but it sort of seems like you're resetting, and it's like a second season starts on Saturday, because you've got the quarterback change. You've had this kind of week to decompress from really what was, not that the schedule gets any easier, but this schedule the first 6 weeks of the year was kind of brutal. And for as friendly as starting with 5 home games in a row is, I do think there is a little bit of a mental exhaustion that comes from that, because, you like going on the road. You like learning I think you learn something different about your team. You take steps forward as a team when you go on the road, and to not do that until October, kind of a quirk in the schedule this year, but felt like a natural time to get healthy. You're navigating this quarterback change with Jack Tuttle. You're looking to kind of round into form on what these last 6 games of the season will be. So, fellas, I'll start with this. Did you get, in taking a step back, I know we all kind of did stuff to evaluate the team, and there'll still be stuff we do this week to evaluate the team, but when you take a step back and look at the totality of these first 6 games, is there anything that became more clear having a week off? Is there anything you're less clear about? Just kind of what did you learn from last week not playing a football game?
I watched every Big Ten game. I watched games around the country. What I learned is that Michigan probably has the worst passing game in the country. And I don't think that's hyperbole if we're watching all these other teams that know what they're doing. And every other team that tries to throw the ball. Okay. So all right, we'll go 131 out of 133, Clay, or whatever it is. At 134 now, I don't know what it is, but
you got to respect the troops. But
yeah, I do respect the troops, and you know what, I wish if it were Alex Orji, I wish they ran that offense, but it's not. So, but they are as bad as I thought they were, and there's everybody in the country. There are teams with a lot less talent that are doing a lot more with their wide receivers, and of course, part of that's the quarterback position, which we all said in the spring they needed to go to the portal. We thought so. That's kind of on them. At the same time, there was a lot of great football, and there's a lot of parity. It is hard. I know now. I knew then. I know now to travel across the country and win, unless you get a couple very fortunate calls like Penn State did against USC. So Washington, I knew was going to lose at Iowa. I didn't think Iowa would score 40 points on them. That was depressing. But overall, Michigan's got a long, long way to go, and that kind of confirmed it for me. Everything that I saw on Saturday kind of confirmed it for me. So there are lots of position coaches at Michigan that need to step up their games and make their groups better going into this Illinois game, or they'll lose that one too.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. Like, there are some good teams left on the schedule. I think Oregon, Ohio State both looked very, very good. Ohio State defense didn't look maybe as good as I thought they were going to, but Oregon is has a very good offense, and Dylan Gabriel is a pretty darn good college quarterback. I don't know what he's going to do at the next level, if anything, but He's won a lot of games at the college level at his 3 schools that he's been at. And, he beat Texas last year as Oklahoma's quarterback and then wins that big one against Ohio State. Illinois, what a wild game that was with Purdue, goes to overtime after they had a massive lead at halftime. Certainly not a world beater, and Michigan jumping up to, be multi-point favorite here going in on the road. So there are going to be a lot of challenging games coming up, no question about it, but a lot of winnable games as well. And the travel is taking a toll, as you kind of alluded to, Chris. I'm wondering too, like, what are these teams doing the week after some of these long trips? Because Sherrone Moore talked about it, where coming in, they wanted this, to kind of set it up where it's a night game Eastern time, which it was. They didn't want to really adjust to the time change. But then he said, when you get back at 5:30 in the morning on Sunday morning, the bye was much needed. So a lot of these teams have to play a game a week after that. And in Oregon's case, they played a home game, but then they have a short week here and play Friday at Purdue. So how are they going to respond after a big emotional win in which the field was stormed? So that's kind of interesting to me, where Michigan was fortunate when the bye came in that regard. But how are these teams going to perform? And as the season goes on, how much of a toll will that travel take? Because Oregon comes here on November 2nd, and, that's a game Michigan could get.
Yeah, I think for me, just kind of taking a wide angle lens of this season to this point, to me, it's clear, even from a Big Ten perspective. I mean, I think Oregon, Ohio State, even the score would even bear this out. Kind of 1A, 1B in this conference. Penn State has had a hell of a season to this point. I think in a lot of ways better than I expected. Going to the year, I would have penciled in a cross country trip for them as a loss, and they're one of the few teams that have gone out west and got it done. So, and it's just kind of everyone else right now in the Big Ten. I think Michigan is lumped in with this cluster of other teams like Illinois. Maybe Indiana's a step ahead of them to a certain extent, but
Iowa.
Really, when you just look at college football as a whole, I see this season as being maybe 3 or 4 teams who are legitimately, I think, could win the national title. But with travel, we're going to have playoff teams traveling to sites, to home sites of whoever hosts these games. It could get a little bit chaotic, but I'll be honest, it does feel a little bit watered down just as a whole. But from Big Ten perspective, I think it's clear who those best 3 teams are. Michigan's going to have a chance to play itself into that conversation, but can't even really be thinking about that right now. You got to find a way to go out and win a football game on Saturday. That Vegas line's gone back and forth, but they are favored at this point. I think for them, as we kind of move into what Sherrone Moore said on Monday, biggest thing I take away is that it seems like, one, guys are getting healthier. But then again, going into the Washington game, didn't know that they would have the amount of injuries that they did. But it seems like offensive line shuffling is on the table. We know that Jack Tuttle is going to start at quarterback. It feels like last week, it sounds like they went to fundamentals, but it sounds like to me, everyone was kind of on notice in terms of self-scouting, self-evaluating, and moving forward as a football team here.
Yeah, the coaches have got to do a better job. And I will say this: Sherrone Moore talked about fundamentals and technique, and that's exactly what's lacking. If you go back and watch the film, you don't have to be a coach to understand that if guys are overrunning tackles and overrunning plays, that's a fundamental. That just can't happen. These are basics. Guys, the lack of communication in the secondary. If there's somebody open and there's nobody around them, somebody missed a call, or there's a lack of communication, things like that. Poor tackling, we've seen that. That's something we haven't seen a lot of in the last 3 years. So as somebody over here says, we should come out after this bye week with our hair on fire. You hope so, but if things start to go south in that environment, are these guys going to fight? We never had a problem the last 3 years. When things got bad, those guys had the confidence knowing that they were going to come back and they were going to probably win that football game. These guys have a hard time with that. And somebody close to the program told me, who's been around forever, he said it's going to be tough for this group to win on the road this year. And he was right. You look at what happened at Washington, and that was a very winnable game. Washington is not a good football team. People can say whatever they want to. They're probably going to finish 6-6 or 5-7 themselves. They gave up 40 freaking points to Iowa, guys. That's usually a season's worth of points for Kirk Ferentz's team. So, So that's where it starts. They've got to get more from the offensive line, guys in position. There are guys that are not playing to their potential there at defensive back. If you look at the linebackers, wide receivers, that's four groups right there that need to be infinitely better if this team's going to reach its goals and its ceiling this year.
The offensive line seems like the one position where changes are coming, and Sherrone Moore pretty much even said as much with the center spot. It's kind of funny. You go back and forth a little bit a lot of the season with Dominic Jadis and then Greg Crippen kind of rotating in here and there. And then Jadis gets hurt, Crippen starts one game, and I think, maybe Jadis isn't going to be 100% right away, but he says, yeah, it looks like Greg is going to cement himself as a starter. So apparently he did enough in that Washington game to do that. And then Jeff Percy, hey, good for him in his 5th year, taking advantage of his opportunity when Miles Hinton goes down, steps in, makes his 2nd career start at left tackle, does well enough for Sherrone Moore to talk about him now competing, it sounded like, at right tackle with Evan Link, who has allowed, I think 17 pressures this year. It's one of the highest marks in the country. He's had a lot of issues in pass protection. So I think we do see a little bit of shuffling on the offensive line. You hope that includes a healthy Miles Hinton, though, because I do think they missed him quite a bit in this last game. But it'll be interesting to see after another week if this offensive line can come together even more. We've seen them make strides in the run game. Now it's the pass protection that is going to be the issue. And Sherrone Moore talked about the turnovers today. He said a lot of it has been route distribution and, the timing of the throws. I think, he blamed one of them on one of the picks on pressure, but I think there's been pressure more than just one time on those, and that can affect the timing. So do whatever you can to make sure your quarterback, who is a 7th-year senior, but is really not all that experienced as a starting quarterback, he's only made 5 starts in his career, make sure he's put in the best position possible. It's an offensive line entering the back half of the season. They should be able to do that at this point in the year.
Yeah, I think something that kind of troubles me a bit is, now again, we're not in the room. We don't see practices. We don't have access to practice film, but the performance stuff of why did it take 6 games to say, oh, you know what, we might need to try something else at right tackle. Or it seemed like a couple weeks ago when Greg Crippen was in games, that's when, we saw some of Michigan's best offensive drives of the season on a team that hadn't had many of them. And I got, there was some injury stuff in there at center and some shuffling back and forth there. But, you just hope some of these tweaks aren't too late, because you've already let a winnable game slip away at Washington. In order to kind of offset that, if we're just speaking strictly in terms of their goals are still in front of them, which is something they'll say until that's no longer the case. You have to kind of go out now and get one that you're not supposed to get to make up for the Washington game, which, truth be told, you should have won. So, to me, it's good that it seems like those changes are coming. I think it's needed that some of those changes could be on the way. I think good health is just needed too. I remember, we had a conversation about this offensive line pre, the start of the year, and my biggest question mark was how Miles Hinton would fare at left tackle. And he's arguably been the most steady one out of all of them. So getting him back would absolutely be huge this weekend as well. So, any other takeaways from what Sherrone had to say on Monday? I know it was without the benefit of having a game to discuss, just kind of meat and potatoes there.
Yeah, not a whole lot. I asked him about, and I'll be writing a column about this tomorrow, about preparing for the future, because after this year, the roster is tough this year, and then think about next year, guys, and what's not coming back. You have 4 guys that'll probably go in the first round or close to it, and so preparing for the portal, preparing for recruiting, preparing for keeping the guys on the roster that you want. And he had a good answer about that we'll touch on tomorrow. But he said Sean McGee's all over it, making out rosters and probably salaries and got things like that. College, God bless college football in 2024. But and then of course he talked about Illinois being a tough place to play, and it is, guys. You'll find out, Clay, when you go down there. Those people hate Michigan, and they are loud. It is very loud in that stadium when they have a chance to beat Michigan. And this is year, unfortunately, they do have a chance to beat Michigan. We wouldn't have guessed it before the year, but that's the reality of it. Michigan will still have a third or more of the stadium at Indiana. That won't be the case at Illinois because nobody likes to go to Champaign. It's kind of a dump, with all due respect. So, but it will be tough. And he mentioned that they are improving dramatically under Brett Bielema. I understand that last week they struggled with Purdue. They were probably overlooking them a little bit. I think they're a better team than they showed against Purdue. That will probably be a dogfight on Saturday, unfortunately.
Their game against Purdue was kind of like Michigan's against Minnesota. Now Minnesota's a better team than Purdue. I mean, Purdue is terrible under Ryan Walters. You hate to see what's going on there at a once proud program that made the Big Ten championship game a couple years ago. But ever since he's taken over, things have just felt off. But I digress. Michigan doesn't play Purdue this year. But, so things just kind of snowball. They happen one half of football and an onside kick later. And next thing you know, you're in overtime and they pulled it off. Purdue goes for 2 at the end. But certainly they've showed some good things, right? I mean, people didn't expect them to go to Kansas and win. Kansas isn't as good as a lot of us thought they were going to be coming into the season, but that's a big win. They go and beat Nebraska as well. So they've played in some tough environments. They've, gained some confidence throughout the course of this year. Michigan has their experience in the road venue at Washington, a tougher venue than Illinois, and didn't get the job done, but did have some spurts there. They got to learn from that, take the bye week, get healthier, and make sure that they're better off for it. With a quarterback in Jack Tuttle, who looks like the best of the group. I don't know exactly how good that is. And that's a huge question here. And if he is pretty good, he's going to give you a chance in most outings, but it's just big this week to come out, make sure you made the corrections you had to, play clean and take your shot here at an Illinois team that is definitely wanting to beat Michigan. Brett Bielema talked today about he's still a little torn up about the 2022 game at the Big House where he thought they should have gotten a call at the end when Isaiah Gash, got him. And but that's what you do. I mean, sorry, you get gashed. You come to the Big House. Isaiah Gash is going to make a big play against you. So that's kind of how it goes.
Yeah. Can I say something real quick? Can I say something real quick, Anthony? I'm sorry about Walty, Clay's boy Walty at Purdue. 2 things I noticed in that game. Number one, you got 1st and goal on your last touchdown, right? And you run that great play to score a touchdown. But why not punch it in there from 3 yards out and then save that play for your 2-point conversion if you're going to go for 2? Because as my buddy Jeff Schiller said, M Hoops won, that play was fantastic. And they win the game with that 2-point conversion if they save that play for that, because they had a 1st and goal. They're probably going to get it in anyway if they run it 4 times. Second of all, if you're going to go for, you got to go for 2 anyway on the second possession of overtime, right? So I'm not quite sure what they were thinking. They were moving the ball at will. They could have gotten a touchdown there in the second overtime if Illinois scores. Actually, I think Purdue would have gotten the ball first that time. They didn't stop you. They weren't going to stop you. Go out and then, go for your 2 after that. So just some stupid coaching decisions. He's just not a very good head coach, Clay.
I think he's thinking, hey, I'm such a bad coach and my team is no good. We might as well just try to win it here in overtime. It doesn't make sense. And leave it to Walty to only have 1 2-point play, though, coming into a game. You got to have multiple.
Anything else on Ryan Walters? I know both of you guys always.
I think we'll do a segment on him at the end. I think I'm just kidding.
That'd be great.
I love it.
I wish Michigan played them this year. I really do, so we could talk more about him. But
right.
I'd prefer to talk less about him, honestly. Let me ask you guys this: these first 6 games, I mean, is this going to be predictive of what this team is going to be? Or is there a gear that this team can still find? Because, for me, I'm sitting here and I'll just say this. I tend to believe that not a whole lot is probably going to change just because I think a lot of their issues, I think, are both talent and, execution and coaching stuff that I'm not super high on getting fixed at the moment. But you come out of those first few games of the season where you're like, all right, well, play here, play there. Game looks totally different. Fan base is having a different conversation. Do we still feel that way? Or through 6 games, is this team kind of what it is? Or, I just want to know, do you guys feel like there is another gear for this team to find? Because, again, this game Saturday is not going to be a gimme. I don't care what anyone says. I think the Michigan State game is probably going to be super stressful for stupid reasons and for rivalry reasons. It's a night game now, which I'm never super fired up about, especially in this rivalry. You kind of got to get, if you want to sell anyone on championship football or the potential of making the college football playoff, there's no scenario where you cannot leave the month of October at 6-2. Because I mean, there's outside of that Northwestern game, there's nothing on that schedule in November that you can sit there comfortably and say, well, that's a win, that's a win, that's a win. So plant your flag now, I guess. I mean, is what we saw the first 6 weeks predictive of what's to come, or is this team capable of making those corrections and kind of snapping itself back into form?
I think with Jack Tuttle in there, at least you have a guy now that looks like a quarterback. Whereas the previous guys, you had a guy that looked like he was, if Davis Warren plays an entire season, he was making strides other than the turnovers. I get it, but he was throwing some balls. He looked like, he was making some plays, making some good throws. Alex Orji never showed that. He never showed any nuance for the position. And so with Jack Tuttle in there, I think the expectations go up a little bit, not exponentially, obviously. Number one, because you aren't sure if he's going to stay healthy. He never has in his career, but I do think that helps. Number two, getting healthy, and which Jair Hill's going to show up, right? If teams are able to keep picking on him like Washington did, he had a great game against USC, and then he comes back and he lays an egg against Washington. I mean, we saw in 2020, remember when that terrible Michigan State team came in here and threw all over Michigan. All you need is a few big plays to win a football game. If they give those up, they could lose to Michigan State. People say there's no way, but I can promise you that Jonathan Smith, probably with Mark D'Antoni in the background, is watching film every week, looking for Michigan's weaknesses and ways to win that football game, understanding what that can mean to bolster his career at Michigan State. So I think you're right, but I think you have to win those two, Anthony, and then that gets you to that Oregon game with a ton on the line, and what an atmosphere that would be, fellas. Then you're talking about, okay, this is going to have like a championship game atmosphere. Then you've got an opportunity to go to that Ohio State game with something still to play for. So it is time to play your best game on Saturday. They lose that one though, all bets are off to me. Then you have guys saying, okay, at least maybe subliminally that there's nothing left to play for, and you know what, it's time to maybe shift it into a lower gear.
I think there's definitely more that this team can do, and we've seen it at stretches during the season. I mean, look at the way the defense played in the beginning of the game against USC, and even the offense running the ball, kind of controlling field position. They didn't turn it over, and they're able to win that game without really any passing game at all. Now, I think you do have a better passing game with Jack Tuttle. He's got to stay healthy, but he's shown he can be a much better quarterback than what we've seen from Michigan pre-Jack Tuttle, pre-second quarter at Washington. So I think get a little bit more balanced on offense, play to your strengths, which is still running the ball, but understanding you can complete some passes down the field if you need to. Play good on special teams. You have a great kicker. Make sure you're better in the field position game, and obviously limiting turnovers will be a big part of that. And then get back to playing good to great defense like you have at times this year, but not enough. And on the Jair Hill thing, he's looked good at times, but he's also played poorly at other points. But when you have a really good defensive line or great defensive line that can rush the passer, when you have a great corner on the other side, you have solid safeties that are at least veteran, but not high-level talents. There should be able to be some things you can do to protect that other corner. So hopefully during the bye week, as Sherrone Moore talked about today, they self-scouted, understand how they can play to their strengths on defense as well. And that defense can be good enough to keep you in a lot of these games. It can't do it on its own. I think that's something we learned through 6 weeks. It's not going to be one of those things like 2017 Michigan where they could run a little bit and exploded for big rushing outputs in a lot of those games. They were trying to figure out the quarterback thing with the injuries back there, but that defense was ridiculous most of the year, and really carried them. And they put there was so much put on them, but they were still able to do it. This defense not quite there yet, but certainly has the talent to get to that point. And if they get enough help from the offense, you're in every game. Ohio State, I think that's tough on the road, but like you said, CB, I mean, Oregon's coming here. It's going to be a great environment. And the other ones are certainly winnable outside of Ohio State. And then even that we'll see, because it's still a long way to go.
Yeah. And for me, again, with all the questions that we have about this team right now. I look at the pieces on the roster, even on offense. I mean, there are guys I expect more from Tyler Morris and from Samaj Morgan. I just do. I need to see those guys step up. I expect more at the quarterback position now. I expect much more than we've seen from the back end of Michigan's defense, Will Johnson included. And with all that we've just talked about, I still think the pieces are there for this team to find and scratch and claw its way to maybe being 9-2 when they go to Columbus at the end of November, which would, if that's the situation they're in, who knows what you're playing. You only have one conference loss right now. I mean, you're still in the thick of this race mathematically. So, as we sit here and we're kind of splitting hairs and talking, well, can they find a way to grind out a win at Illinois? Can they find a way to grind out a win at Indiana? This is the University of Michigan. And I know that there was a lot that they lost from last year, but it's in there for them to kind of get this thing back on track and find a way to win all of those games leading up to the Ohio State game. And, they're right to take it one game at a time. But from our perspective, I think that we can play the schedule game a little bit. And I think that's still there for them. That gear is still there for them. I'm skeptical it comes because I've seen some things that I think I just think there's a lot intangibly that they've lost from the coaching staff and from the roster. But I still wouldn't be shocked if they found a way to figure this out to a certain extent. But we'll see what happens. There's a lot to figure out still. There's a lot of guys that need to step up and play much better than they have. And like I said, I mean, you're hoping that this bye week serves as the reset that kind of helps them unlock that, because it doesn't seem like enough attention was paid to the fundamentals for this football team. But any other thoughts on this team coming out of the bye? I think we'll get into questions here.
Just win, baby. This is a huge game. We're gonna have fun down there. We're gonna get down there late. Champaign, like I said, not a fun town, but I don't mind the stadium. It's kind of funny the level of hatred they have for Michigan, though, that you never would have expected. And you get down there, and it's not quite as bad as Ohio State, obviously, but it's not that far behind, guys. They think of Michigan as a rival. It's cute, and they got they're all F Michigan pins and everything else, but it'll be a good trip if we come back with a win and keep this season going. There's nothing better than going into somebody else's stadium and winning. Ask Doug Skeen, ask anybody who's ever played, taking over and demoralizing guys in front of their girlfriends. Let's hope that's the case on Saturday. I'm ready to see a road win.
Yeah,
you're gonna wind up on someone's hype video this week. Some Illinois fan.
That's okay. Dude, you think I'm not used to this?
You were forged in these fires. I get it.
Yeah.
Greatness doesn't fear consequences, but it's going to be, historically speaking, you want to be the team that everybody else hates, and there's a reason why you get that hate. And I was having this conversation with some friends on Saturday watching college football. A lot of people that don't root for Michigan, they hated Jim Harbaugh, but they kind of liked Brady Hoke. It's like, well, that's not good for Michigan fans if the other teams that you're competing against like your coach. So the same goes here, right? Michigan's going to go into hostile territory, but it should be fun. It'll be my first trip down there, and excited to check another one off there.
All right, well, we will move into our Q&A segment of this show. This one, we had a $4.99 super chat earlier. Sorry we did not get to it right away, but we're going to bring you up first. This is some from Supreme Mans, who says, for $4.99, says, if you can bring back 3 players from last year to improve this team, who would you bring back? I would argue if you brought back any one of these players, it could be pretty consequential, but he's given us 3. So fellas, take your pick.
JJ McCarthy, obviously, would be number 1. So then it gets dicey, right? You need a receiver, you need an offensive lineman at least, and you need a linebacker. So, and Mikey Sainristil, how do you leave him out? One of the great big play Wolverines of all time. So I would go an offensive lineman, probably Zach Zinter. I would go with JJ McCarthy, and then probably Mikey Sainristil back there, leadership and a great player in the secondary. Everybody's going to be in the right place if Mikey Sainristil is back there, and that's going to be one of those intangibles you talked about. In addition, Anthony.
it's weird to say because the offense is so much behind, I guess you could say, the defense this year. But I would go with J.J. McCarthy and then two defensive players, Mikey Sainristil and Junior Colson. I'd swap in Junior for Jayshon Barham. I would swap in Mikey, and you could play him outside, play him at the nickel, and then JJ just does so much for an offense. I think you'd still just play to the strength of your defense here. Maybe you wouldn't be as good as last year, but you'd be right there competing. We had this conversation on the pod before the season. If this team had JJ McCarthy coming back, which you can't do because all sorts of teams around the country lost guys after their third season, but if they did, you're looking at a preseason top 5 team. Now, I don't know if it, with the benefit of 6 games of hindsight, it would have gone that way, but he would have made a massive, massive difference. They'd be 5-1. Who knows? Maybe 6-0, probably not, but it makes a huge difference. But it's a great question. Too bad those guys are making plays like Mikey getting a pick yesterday in the NFL, and wish them all the best.
Yeah, it's JJ McCarthy. It's Mike Sainristil, and F it. I mean, who would hate on one more season of Blake Corum? Talking about the heartbeat of an offense and taking you across the finish line there. Thank you for the question, Supreme Mans. We will go to this one. I'll actually take one from the message board. This is from Ash34 GoBlue, who says, how are the young guys on the offensive line looking? Any chance some of them could get a look this year? I know it's really hard for them to get snaps as true freshmen. And that kind of, Sherrone more or less said that during his Monday press conference. But any intel behind the scenes or any guys that you might be looking at, maybe getting an extra look at here down the stretch?
Not this year, but they really like their young guys. They like Blake Frazier. I think Blake Frazier is going to be a stud eventually. He's got to add some good weight. And then Andrew Sprague, they really like him too. So those are 2 guys to keep an eye on. So somebody mentioned Andrew Babalola up there. I think they think he's going to pick Michigan, and everybody else does too. So is he a guy that can play as a true freshman? He's a, you know what? That's something to keep an eye on. But as far as the guys that are here, those are the ones that we're hearing the most about, those 2.
It was interesting on his radio show last week during the bye. John Jansen asked him about, who are some freshmen that could impact the second half of the season. He said, edge Dominic Nichols on defense. We've already seen him get some snaps. I think he has the most offense or defensive snaps out of the freshmen. Of course, some of them playing on special teams. So he's one. And then the other was Andrew Sprague at offensive tackle. And we saw him. It was kind of an interesting thing that he came in. He was the right tackle for the kneel down snap against Arkansas State. It was like, okay, well, they wanted to get him in here. Like Andrew Gentry gets to play a little bit as an extra lineman, but they threw him in there at right tackle, threw him maybe a bone a little bit, but he traveled last week or 2 weeks ago now to Washington. And Sherrone Moore mentioned him, like I said, as somebody who could actually play this year in the back half of the season. Then John Jansen asked him as well, and maybe this is him knowing something. He said, could that extra offensive lineman spot be something where you get some of the young guys in? And Sherrone Moore said yes. So maybe it's nothing, maybe it's something there. That would be interesting. Jake Guarnera, he was warming up at right guard, traveled to Washington as well. So some of those freshmen are in maybe the 3 deep at this point, pushing. So it's good to see that they trust him enough to do that. And it's good, that some of these young guys got to go on that trip and are going to be on the traveling roster too. So they're not thrown into the fire when it is their time in some of these tough environments.
It's a $10 super chat from Mr. Dave, who says it's a wedding gift. So I accept that humbly and say,
goes right to the company.
That's right. The best thing you could do to celebrate my wedding is give on 3 $10. So we appreciate that. First of all, congratulations, AB. Here's a wedding gift. Michigan is favored by 3 at Illinois. Does that seem about right to you guys? Should Michigan be favored versus MSU? And I think so. 3 points on the road with this team, I think feels a bit much, but I do think the quarterback change does stabilize it a bit. I don't have an issue with them being favored going into Saturday. I think Illinois, like we talked about earlier, open as a favorite. It's gone a little bit each way. And should they be favored against Michigan State? I think they'll still probably be favored by 2 scores. I could be wrong in that. Maybe Saturday's game determines what that opening Vegas line looks like. But yeah, I can't really argue. I mean, this game Saturday is a coin flip game. So if you want to say it's Michigan favored by 3, I get it. If you want to say it's Illinois, I get it. Next weekend, yeah, Michigan should be a 2-score favorite against that Spartan team.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think Michigan will be like a 9.5, 10-point favorite against Michigan State. I think this is, like you said, a coin flip game. It could go either way. And if things go south early, then you know what? It's going to be tough for Michigan. Michigan's got to get off to a good start on Saturday. Playing in, it's going to be a snake pit. I'm telling you. You go down there, and if things start going south, and guys start turtling and can't handle the pressure, then it's going to be tough to pull that one out. But I could see that one going either way, but I think it's about right. And I do think Michigan will be favored, like you said, Anthony, by about 9.5 or 10 points against Michigan State. That's not a good football team. I will say this: they probably won't turn the ball over as much against Michigan as they have against everybody else. And they've got a quarterback who can make some plays, who I think is going to be pretty good down the road. And I think it's a well-coached football team. So they just don't have the talent right now. So, but that is a game that Sherrone Moore cannot afford to lose. You want to lose the fan base, and I wrote this last week, lose Michigan State. That just cannot happen, especially this year to this team.
9-10 points sounds about right for Michigan State. Although if Michigan goes down and wins by 21 at Illinois or something like that, could change, maybe 11 or whatever. But yeah, I thought it feels right that they're, favored by 3 points against Illinois. Yeah, that's one that is going to be just a huge game for what the rest of the season looks like for Michigan. But I mean, the good thing is if you do go down, right, they get punched in the face early. This team fights. I mean, they were down 14-0 at Washington, come, back and have the lead. So this team's got that, type of DNA in it, I think. And, that's just like Illinois showed last week. They got to play for 60 minutes. They're going to have to play for 60 minutes against Michigan too. It's not going to be a pushover. Michigan's no cream puff.
Yeah, that's the one thing. I mean, for as much as Sherrone Moore and his staff have been criticized, I think the one thing we can safely say is that they do play hard and they do play for 4 quarters. And listen, that Texas game got away from them, but and maybe Sark let off the gas a little bit at the end, but they did play hard. And I don't get the sense that he's even close to losing the team. It's just everyone has to be better. So we'll see what happens there. And also, speaking of people clipping Chris Ballas, Michigan State people, listen to him giving your program some flowers tonight. There you go. You love to see it. Supreme Mance is back with another $4.99 super chat saying, should Alex Orji be a receiver? He has the side and speed and also run talent. He has the size. I don't know that he has any of the other things, really. I just think he's kind of an athletic dude that they don't know what to do with.
Yeah, maybe tight end. Bulk him up a little bit and ask him to do some things. I think EJ Holland said he probably should have been there, a linebacker in college. And I think that Michigan took him with the idea that it could be like maybe make him a position switch early in his career, but he wanted to be a quarterback. So good on him for giving it a shot. It just wasn't for him. So I know everybody wants to love him. The t-shirts we saw with his name featuring different creative sayings are fantastic, but it just was not meant for him to be at that position. So I don't know that there is a position for him. I'm with Anthony.
I don't know about the size to be a receiver. I think he's a little too bulky, like in a good way. I mean, he's rocked up. He's super strong. He's a little tall to be a running back. So yeah, maybe like a fullback tight end type or a quarterback that can come in and run. And, we've seen him do that throughout his career. Sherrone Moore said today that he'll have a role. So we'll see what that is. Will it be similar to what he had at the beginning of this season? Because there's potential for somebody who can do that, like we saw with Washington and their backup quarterback last week. But it does not right now the caliber of a starting quarterback.
All right, I'm going to go to the message board for the next one. This is from AM89, who I know is on here. I don't know if he's on here live tonight, but he is usually on our streams. He says multiple times in their games against Nebraska and Purdue, Illinois look to have guys that can really catch. Given our stats against the pass, what is one aspect that gives us some hope they won't be hitting open guys against Michigan all down the field all day?
You talking about Illinois?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot of confidence that Michigan's pass defense is going to get a whole heck of a lot better. And this has been one of the disappointments of the year for me. Rod Moore, we knew they were going to miss him. They missed him even more than we thought they would. So, but I think they're second to last in the country in passes allowed over 10 yards. That's absurd, fellas. When you've got Will Johnson, who's supposed to be an All-American, shutting down one half of the field, then there are things that you can do to help the other side. And but the communication's been terrible. The safety play has not been good. Makari Page really needs to up his game. And those are things that need to improve, and we need to see much more out of that group. So I called out basically 4 position groups that needed to be coached better this week and going forward. I called out in a column today, the secondary, the offensive line, the wide receivers, and probably the linebackers, right? So there's a lot of them. So that needs to improve.
A lot of the big plays too, and those 10 plus yard plays have to do with missed tackles too. So they've got to do better there. And Sherrone Moore mentioned the angles. That one of the pillars of the defense, right? Effort and angles, and something that hasn't been good enough this year. But Illinois has a receiver with almost an identical stat line to Denzel Boston, who gave them fits from Washington. Pat Bryant, who's got 27 catches for 452 yards, 7 touchdowns. The guy they can go to had 7 scores last season in 12 games. So on pace for double that at this point. Do you move Will Johnson around and have him follow Pat Bryant, who's their best receiver? Because, Washington was able to get Jair Hill in a bunch of matchups with Boston, and he took advantage, whether it was an easy slant, on 3rd and 8 or whatever it was. 3rd and 6 was another one where they did the same thing, or they were going a little bit deeper. They were able to have success on him. So they got to figure out a way to stop those. So I think Luke Altmaier, their quarterback, has gotten so much better from last season. He was pretty bad in the beginning of last year with turnovers and fumbling all over the place. I think he had like 5 or 6 turnovers against Penn State watching that game. So he's gotten better. So they're going to be able to throw the ball a little bit. It's up to Michigan to rise to that challenge and show that they've improved.
Wait, so you're saying quarterbacks can actually improve, and that just because he threw 3 interceptions in one game doesn't mean that he's going to throw 3 or 2 the next game?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Just like Davis Warren, Alex Orji, and Jack Tuttle.
There you go.
Right on. Love to hear that. We'll go with this one from Christopher Durr. Says the question is, will Michigan have a 200-yard passing game this year, which would require, by definition, your quarterback to improve from his previous performance?
I'll go with yes. I think Jack Tuttle had 98 yards in 2.5 quarters, if I'm not mistaken. And I think he'll get better. I think he'll be in there. I'm going to go. Yeah, I think they will. I don't know that it'll be this week, but I think it will be within the next 3 or 4 weeks.
Yeah, I think they easily will again. Obviously have already once this year against Texas and could get there again. But Jack Tuttle is a completely different quarterback than the other two. I think Davis Warren had the potential to do that. Well, he did do it. But Jack Tuttle it was a different level. It's not an elite level. It's not JJ McCarthy out there, but that was a different level once he got in that game. It didn't end the way he wanted it to. There was no excusing what happened, maybe other than some rust, right? He hadn't played since the Michigan State game last year, but the throws and the plays he did make, just the simple stuff alone, is going to get you a little bit more balance with that offense. And getting to 200 isn't that hard in today's college football. They should be able to get there.
He'll do it, and he'll do it this weekend. There you go. It's a preview for Thursday's show.
I like it.
Nice.
Let's go. I just had one pulled up from the board, and I closed out the tab. That's my fault. Forget that. We'll take this one from the chat. I don't like doing questions like this, but someone took the time to ask the question, so we'll respect that. It says, who's more likely to be replaced after this season, Kirk Campbell or Wink Martindale? And I'll just say this. I think that some of the gaffes on defense have been particularly alarming to where I do have questions about if this can work. I have major questions on offense, but that defense was supposed to keep Michigan afloat in some of these games. And, I think that they've let them down a few times this year.
Yeah,
I'll just leave it at that.
and how much of that is, yeah, how much of that is, position coaches again have to be better too, right? These guys are making mistakes that they should not be making, and I went back and after, it might have been a little bit brutally honest, but I said that this team really misses Steve Klinkscale in the secondary, and just thought he was that good. That's more really. Um, not an indictment on the current coaching staff, but on how good Steve Klinkscale was. So those guys need to be better. The linebackers need to be coached better, and it's like Kurt Campbell said, you can criticize him all you want to. They've got a lot more on the play sheet, but if you can't do the fundamentals and the basics, how are you going to turn the page to get these guys to do something a little more advanced? And they're just whiffing on the basics, whether it's a simple tackle and twist on the offensive line, whether it is a blitz pickup by your senior captain running back, whether it's receivers not getting the proper depth on a route or not running the right routes, which we've seen all of that. We've seen all of that. That is the sign of a team that needs to be better coached. And so it really starts from the top down. I think that Sherrone Moore knows it. He said they got back to the basics, the fundamentals and techniques this week. We'll see if that really plays a factor on Saturday, because those are the areas they really need to improve if this team's going to improve. And it starts with the position coaches. And then, yeah, there are certain times too where they run some head scratching blitzes. And, we've been so spoiled, guys, the last 3 years when it comes to elite defense. And I know that Wink Martindale's been doing this for 40 years, but those other two guys really, really were outstanding coordinators. And you see that because one's a head coach in the NFL and one's going to be before long.
Yeah, this is too hard of a question, really, to
Mhm.
answer 6 games in. To me, I don't really have an opinion on it. So, yeah, I think it's too early, and I have to see the rest of the year how it plays out, because they have been hindered in some areas by personnel, especially on offense. Like you said, Chris, I mean, it's like, okay, well, call all these plays that could go for big gains and all this. Well, if we're not protecting, how is the quarterback going to have time to throw the ball downfield, that sort of thing? So there's a lot more that goes into it than just what they're calling. And I know that's not all those two coordinators do, but too early for me to really say, because honestly, I haven't thought much about it.
Yeah, and Jack Tuttle has a ball batted down at Washington. Otherwise, Kalel Mulling's still running, and Donovan
Currently,
Edwards slips.
yeah.
Right, and Donovan Edwards has a slip on a wide open hole. And I did ask that question, by the way, about the cleats, because everybody was asking, and Sherrone Moore kind of punted on it, and he said, "Yeah, we need to do a better job, and we're okay. We have a plan for that. If guys are slipping, and at the same time they got to keep their feet. So I think it's a combination of both there."
Yeah, I mean, if we're just again talking about planting flags earlier, to me, I think a lot of their issues are more on execution as opposed to play calling. Not that both aren't an issue; both of those things can be true. But like you guys said, I mean, when you can't stay upright or you can't pass block, or you can't do basic things, there are things that they probably have installed that you can't even get off the play sheet. So give those guys a little bit of grace in that regard. I think we're going to end on this one from Snortimer. From our message board. He says, I asked this a few weeks ago, but after the Washington game, do you think that Omarion Walker is about to come online? He had some nice plays and could have had more. It feels like having a tall and fast wide receiver could really open up the offense.
Go ahead, Clay. You start.
I mean, I think he's going to have more of a role. I think Sherrone kind of said that today. So, yes, and I like what we saw with the one catch last game. But there's also a time where, one of the picks against Arkansas State, he falls down. His guy's able to come off of him and then make the interception on a pass intended for Samaj Morgan. So, just things that clearly in a wide receiver room where they're still kind of tinkering with the rotation, they trust who they trust. And it seems like they're trusting Omarion Walker a little bit more right now, in going forward. But there was a reason why also he was not out there in the beginning of the year. I hope it's just because, hey, it's the adjustment back to wide receiver after playing DB, coming back, getting used to the offense after being on defense, the last year. And then maybe he can kind of take a big leap here in the second half of the season. But also, I'll have to, see it to believe it, I guess, that he's going to have some major role.
I don't see that at all. I think it was nice to see him catch the ball that was thrown to him and run a nice route. And to me, it's the whole room. is just not good enough, right? It's part of its talent. Part of it, I think, is they need to be coached better. And I've said that. And I love Ron Bellamy, and I think he can be a good coach, and they got to get more out of that room. So Tyler Morris should be better than he is, guys. And we've seen him do some things. And for them to not find ways to get him the ball at times, to me, is an indictment on the coaching staff, too. So, but it starts at quarterback too. So I think Jack Tuttle is going to create some opportunities for these guys.
Yes.
It's kind of funny that we're thinking of Jack Tuttle as a savior here, uh, Indiana cast off, but he's the best you got. I like the kid. I think he's got some moxie. He at least looks like a quarterback. So let's roll. Let's see what he does.
Are we not going to take Hutch's question?
Oh, shout out Matthew Hutchinson, a former producer. He says, Michigan trying to poach a real coach like James Franklin.
He's a troll.
Are we
Our former producer.
Get him. Get him. Get him.
Oh my God, Hutch. With his
Also,
truck stop hat. Oh, you love him now that he got a gift in a win over USC. They were just MFing him out of town, man, in the tunnel on the way after that Michigan game last year. So they were ready to get rid of him. So
I would
Hutch,
take the tight end. I would take their tight end.
We're going to let you keep James Franklin and his truck stop hat there, Hutch. And but thanks for checking in.
Speaking, before we get out of here, speaking of Hutch, obviously our thoughts are with Aiden Hutchinson. Broke his leg on Sunday. He's out for the rest of the year.
Prayers, yep.
Terrible to see. Prayers up to him. Sounds like he had surgery, emergency surgery on Sunday. Headed over to his website. They've got the donate page is open for his charity. And again, it's a football injury, but a lot of people in the state of Michigan, city of Detroit are bummed today. And, hopefully you can turn something bad into something good here. And, donate to his charity is all I would say. Fellas, that's going to do it for us tonight. Thanks for spending the last hour or so with us here on the Wolverine.com YouTube channel. Be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel if you watch the video versions, or find us wherever you get the audio versions of your shows as well. Use that promo code UM1 to get 2 months of access to the website for $1. It's what Clayton Sayfie calls the best deal in America. So take advantage of that today. Shout out to HomeField. Shout out to all of our friends out there in Michigan fan world. We will talk to you again on Thursday. We preview the game against Illinois. Thanks for watching. We'll talk to you again soon.